My father mocked me for driving trucks. 28 out of 30 raised their hands to exile me. Grandpa said nothing until he rewrote the will on the spot. He drives trucks, for God's sake. You want that to carry our name forward? Uncle Wayne's voice thundered across the long oak dining table, spit flying, fingers jabbing toward me like accusations. This isn't a profession. It's a detour. Aunt Melinda sneered, swirling her wine like she was too classy for this conversation. You really thought Grandpa would leave anything to a dropout in a diesel cab? My cousin Jared barked a cruel laugh, shaking his head, his Rolex catching the chandelier's light. I sat at the far end, not by accident, a quiet corner of Exile. They were already 2 hours into the family meeting, voices overlapping, years of tension crashing into each other like waves. 28 out of 30. Wayne said smugly, holding up his hand. That's consensus. The trust should be split, excluding him. Everyone turned to Grandpa, the only one who hadn't said a word. He sat still, unblinking, staring down at the will in his lap. My name is Caleb Walker. I'm 25, and right now, I feel like a ghost sitting at a table I was born into, but never belonged at. I drive trucks, not because I had no other options, but because I made a choice, a hard one, a real one. They think I failed. What they don't know is why I left college, what I gave up, what I carried, what I still carry. I've kept quiet for years, thinking silence was strength. Turns out it was just an invitation for them to bury me alive. The cost that cut me. Dad, Stephen Walker, 58. A real estate tycoon who stopped being my father the moment I didn't want to follow him into suits and spreadsheets. He once told me, there's no legacy in labor. Uncle Wayne, 62. Thinks volume equals truth. Used me as a punchline every Thanksgiving. Still calls me Diesel Boy. Cousin Jared, 29. Harvard grad. Family's golden child. Snitched on me when I crashed Grandpa's Cadillac at 16 and never let me forget it. Aunt Melinda, 55. Thin-lipped, judgmental, inherited her husband's bitterness after he cheated. Treats me like a smudge on her silverware. You gave Jared 15% in the trust, Wayne 20%, even Melinda's daughter got something. But me, I said, trying to keep my voice from shaking. You're carving me out like I don't even exist. Dad scoffed. You chose this path, Caleb. Don't come crying now. I chose to survive, not to impress you. Their eyes widened. Finally, I spoke back. I could feel Grandpa watching me. I met his gaze, but he looked away. Cowardice? Or calculation? It wasn't just the exclusion. It wasn't even about the money. It was what they did last year. My mom had just passed. I was hauling freight across state lines, unable to make the funeral because they didn't tell me she was gone. Until 2 days after they buried her, I came home to a voicemail. A damn voicemail. No one called, no one texted, and when I confronted Dad, he said, "You were too far, and frankly, we weren't sure you'd show up." That sentence split something in me. After the funeral, I learned they'd already liquidated her personal belongings. Photos, journals, letters, sold, donated. Even the baby blanket she crocheted for me before chemo took her hands. Gone. Without a word. And they wonder why I kept my distance. I was 19 when Grandpa had his first stroke. Everyone scattered. They called it inconvenient timing. I stayed. Took a semester off. Moved into his guest room. Drove him to therapy. Bathed him. Helped him relearn words he once built businesses with. He called me his anchor. One night, he said, "You remind me of your grandmother. Steady, quiet, strong." That night, he asked me to promise something. If this family ever eats itself, don't let it eat you too. And I nodded. not knowing then that the wolves were already sharpening their teeth. Grandpa finally stirred, pulled a pen from his breast pocket, opened the will, crossed something out. Then he ripped out the signature page. Silence. "Dad?" Jared said, uncertain now. "What are you doing?" Grandpa looked up, calm. "You counted votes like this was a board meeting. It's not. I wasn't asking for input." He turned to me. "Caleb. My name. Not he. Not that boy. Not Diesel. I've watched you carry weight none of them could lift with 10 men. Gasps. Melinda's wineglass clinked against her plate. I rewrote the will last night. Grandpa continued. But I hadn't signed it yet, because I wanted to see what you'd all do when you thought I couldn't hear. He signed it. On the spot. The company, it goes to Caleb. The trust, split 50-50 between Caleb and hospice care. The rest, they can keep their votes. Wayne lost it. "This is a joke. He doesn't know EBITDA from engine grease," Jared barked. "You're senile, Grandpa. This isn't legal." I stood, calm. After years of shame swallowing, this moment felt still. "Legal," I said. "Maybe, maybe not. But ethical, moral. Damn right it is." Melinda whispered. "He manipulated you." I turned to her. "You know what manipulation looks like, don't you? You did it to Mom, got in her head, told her she was a burden." Melinda's mascara started to run. Wayne stood to leave. Jared followed. Dad just stared. But Grandpa, he looked lighter, like a man who had finally laid down a century of bricks. I walked out of the house, not storming, just breathing, free. In the driveway, Dad followed me out. "You blindsided us, Caleb." I didn't turn. "No, Dad, you ignored me. There's a difference." He said softly, "You could have told me how much pain you were in. You could have asked." I said, "He reached out but let his hand fall. That was new. He used to force contact. Control." I got in my truck, sat there a moment, looked at the wheel, calloused hands, calloused heart. But somehow, I wasn't angry. I was awake. Weeks passed. I didn't speak to anyone, except Grandpa. He started sending letters again. Real ones, handwritten, shaky but steady. You don't have to run to be a man. You just have to stand when it counts. I kept hauling loads, but I started building too. Something real. Opened a small logistics firm. Called it Anchor Haulage. Didn't put my name on the sign. Didn't need to. Last week, I got a knock at my office door. It was Jared. I applied to be a driver," he said, half laughing. "Why?" I asked. He shrugged. "Because I've never earned anything, and I'm tired of living off someone else's effort." I nodded. Maybe I'd train him. Maybe not. But the crack in the family wall was no longer just damage. It was a window. Later that month, Dad showed up too. No speech, just a photo album in hand. Mom's. He left it on my desk. No words, just a tear in his eye. Forgiveness isn't easy, but it's not impossible. Sometimes healing doesn't start with apologies. Sometimes it starts with silence finally broken. If you've ever been betrayed by the people you love, if your family chose to silence you instead of seeing you, then this story is yours too. Comment below. Have you ever been the black sheep? The overlooked? The scapegoat? What would you have done in Caleb's place? If this story moved you, like this video, subscribe for more emotional, real-life inspired dramas. And remember, they might try to erase you, but the truth always writes itself back in.